Moving on to page 95, we are going to do 6 examples on this page, and I would not write them down until I start them for spacing purposes. So make sure page 95 is titled and numbered, and go ahead and copy down the directions and number 1. So number 1 is just a basic multiplication problem. So you're going to multiply the coefficients and add the exponents. So 4 times 2 is 8. And we have an x and an x, so since the bases match, we can just add the exponents. 3 plus 3 is 6. That's basic. We've already covered that this year. Number 2 is a simple division problem. You might need to write a 1 in for that exponent of x, so you don't forget it. So with division, you look and see where the power is largest. So for x, 5 is bigger than 1, so the x is going to stay on top. 5 minus 1 leaves us with a 4. For y, we have a power of 6 on top and a power of 2 on bottom. So 6 is bigger than 2, leaving the y on top. 6 minus 2 is also 4. So in this case, a 1 would be on the bottom since it all canceled, but we don't put the 1. Your answer would just be x to the 4th, y to the 4th. Number 3, it's a division problem with a negative exponent. So there's technically 2 ways you could do it, but I'm going to use the division rule instead of the negative exponent rule. So 8 is bigger than negative 1, so x is going to stay on bottom. And to figure out our power, we would do 8 minus negative 1. And anytime you're subtracting a negative, you're really adding. 8 plus 1 becomes 9. Since there is nothing left on top because it canceled, there's a 1 here. So make sure you have those 3 examples on page 95 to start. For number 4, it's throwing in a couple things here. You can either do the multiplication rule and write it out as many times as the power says, or you can use the power rule. So I'm going to do it both ways. If the only thing you remember is this power on the outside tells you how many times to write the inside, you're good. So I'm going to take 2c(d to the 4th) and write that 2 times. On the second set of parentheses, we're going to take cd and write it 5 times. So now this is one big multiplication problem. Don't forget that all of these single variables all have powers of 1 if you need to write them in. So we're going to multiply our coefficients and add our exponents. So 2 times 2 is 4. And now we're going to add our exponents. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 c's. And 4 plus 4 is 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 d's. So d to the 13. That's the longer approach to this problem, so I'm also going to show you how to do it with the power rule over here to the side. So if we have 2cd to the 4th, and then that's squared, times cd to the 5th. So the power rule says if you've got a power raised to a power, you multiply them. So this 2 has a power of 1, so 1 times 2 would give me 2 squared. This c has a power of 1, so 1 times 2 is 2. D has a 4. 4 times 2 is 8. That's the first set. And then in the second parentheses, these both have 1s. So 1 times 5 would be c to the 5th. 1 times 5 would be d to the 5th. And we have to simplify one more time. So 2 squared is 4. 2 plus 5 is c to the 7. 8 plus 5 is d to the 13. So as you can see, you get the same answer no matter what. It just depends on your preference and how much you want to remember. If I were you, I would just stick to this method because there's less to remember. Where in the power to a power method, you can't forget that these have powers of 1. Number 5 is a multiplication problem, so we're just going to add the exponents. So they all have the same base, so j is going to be in our answer. And we're going to do negative 13 plus 4 plus 6. And addition, it doesn't matter which order you add. So if I didn't have a calculator, I would add these first and get 10. So I'm really doing negative 13 plus 10, which is negative 3. At this point, it's a negative exponent, and we usually don't leave them like that. So the negative 3 would bring this j down in the denominator with a positive 3 and a 1 on top. So that would be the final answer for number 5. So make sure you have those two answers written down and go ahead and copy number 6. I'll pause for a second to make sure you've got 4 and 5 down, and 6 is on the next slide. Moving on to number 6. Number 6 has a lot going on, so I'm going to work this one slow and in multiple steps. So the first thing we're looking at is this negative 2 on the outside. So the negative 2 is going to, since it's negative, it's going to flip this fraction, so all of this stuff is going to swap spots. So the denominator now becomes the numerator, and the numerator now becomes the denominator. When you swap that, the negative 2 on the outside becomes a positive 2. Again, I'm going to do this one the way I recommend you do it. This power of 2 on the outside means you're going to take what's on the inside and write it twice. Knowing that helps you with many different types of problems, just not exponent rules, and I feel as though it allows you to make less mistakes than using the power rule. And then now you just straight up multiply. 3 times 3, those are coefficients, so we multiply them, that's 9. A with A, we're going to add the powers. 2 plus 2 is 4. B with B, 3 plus 3 is 6. With the C's, 7 plus 7 is C to the 14. On the bottom, negative 2 times negative 2 is a positive 4. A to the 3 plus 3 is A to the 6. B to the 2 plus 2 is B to the 4th. And then C to the 0 with 0 is just 0. So we've gotten rid of the parentheses and the negative exponent. Now this is a division problem. So looking at 9 and 4, they cannot be simplified, so that stays 9 and 4. Looking at your A, 6 and 4, 6 is bigger, so it's going to stay on bottom. 6 minus 4 is 2. Looking at your B's, 6 is bigger than 4, so B is going to stay on top. 6 minus 4 is 2. For the C's, what's bigger, 14 or 0? 14. 14 minus 0 is still 14. And this would be our final answer. So make sure on page 95 you have this for number 6, showing all the work so you understand where the numbers come from. Once you've got that copied on page 96, you can number and title it We're not going to copy these notes today. And then same thing with page 97. It's going to get the same title, just obviously with numbered page 97. So page 96 and page 97 share the same title. Make sure you've got that ready to go for next Tuesday.